Hello and welcome. Welcome to Hazardous Opinions, our first episode. Today
Today
we're
we're doing
doing.
Hellblade.
Oh,
Shit.
okay. Do you want to go first or should
Sorry.
I go first?
No, you're good.
Okay. Today we are doing Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, a game developed by Ninja Theory. I think Ninja Theory is a pretty small developer. I think there's only like 30 people in it.
Yeah, from what I've seen in the different things and from their previous gameography, I suppose you'd say, they did the Devil May Cry games, but not all of them. And then they did
Well,
a
they
couple
didn't
other smaller games.
They didn't do all the Devil May Cries. They actually did that one Devil May Cry, the DMC one, which is also it's like a remaster of the first one. It's actually not even a remaster. It's like a completely different like version of that one.
Hmm. Yeah, I haven't played Devil May Cry. They also did Bleeding Edge in 2020, which didn't last long on
It did
Xbox.
not. It did not. I actually played that game and it had like a cool concept, but it just I get what they're going for. It was supposed to be like some Overwatch type like hero shooter, but instead of shooting, it was slashing, which is a really cool concept, but it just didn't land right. Didn't get well
Yeah,
received, but not. I think the servers were up for not that long either. But yeah, that's Ninja Theory.
yeah, and they did a couple Disney Marvel games and then a couple older ones back in '07 and 10. But for the most part, they're pretty light developer, and this is one of their biggest games.
Oh, absolutely. There's a second one coming out too, which at the end of this one, it was definitely a sequel hook there. So
Yeah, much needed, and I'm very excited for it. And from the articles I've already seen, it looks like it's going to be a lot bigger. So looking forward to that.
yeah, absolutely. This game this game was it was pretty fun. Actually, at first I kind of didn't like it because it was super confusing to me. So, like before I understood like the concepts of what they went into about like psychosis or whatever, having it actually be explained to me with through the feature or whatever, I just didn't understand what was going on. As me being a casual gamer, I'm like, what the hell is going on here? But after I actually understood what concepts they were trying to convey, I like appreciated the game a lot more. I think the the combat was definitely a highlight for this one.
Yeah, I definitely agree there.
Yeah, it was so fun to be able to do all the counters with the perfect blocking. I was perfect blocking like all the time. I'm like, oh, this is so good.
That took me a while. I think it was not until my third major combat after the about second boss after Valraven
Yeah,
where I finally got the hang of it. I'm like, oh, there's a block button. There's
there's a
the
block
focus
button.
button. I
Yep,
think I played through about a third of the game before I realized that there was a focus. And yeah, I was just hindering my ability to play it for a while.
same. And I think that falls on their end there because there is zero tutorial in this game.
Yep.
They like you get thrown like the only way you figure out how to play is by pausing it and looking at the controls, which not what I did for pretty decent. Like after my first session, that's when I paused it. I'm like, oh, the controls are there. And that's when I looked through them, and that's why I figured out there was a melee button. It was B. I was playing it on Xbox. We were both playing it on Xbox. So you press
Oh,
B
like
to
the kick.
the kick, yeah, which definitely helped to defeat those guys with the shields. And
Yeah, you were definitely playing on a handicap if you weren't
I
kicking those
know
guys.
before I figured that out, the only way I was defeating them was by using focus. And I actually didn't know about focus until the first boss fight. So, yeah, the controls on how to play the game wasn't thoroughly conveyed throughout the first part of the game, which probably would have helped my experience a little bit. That would probably have been one of my few complaints about this game, other than, the whole story, which is, I don't know. What do you think of the stories, like in general?
I really enjoyed the story. I think I delved right into it. I'm a big fan of Norse, and I didn't even realize also Celtic lore is included in this.
Yeah.
And the mental health aspects immediately got right to me. I understood it right from the beginning, and I loved it. I thought the lack of UI, which is a constant through this game, there's no indicators, there's no tutorials at all through the game. The only way that you really tell that you're dying or doing well is a little bit of red on the screen, and then some runes that pop up when you're hitting your combo
Yeah.
successfully.
Also,
But
whenever you it's like whenever you know you're about to die, you have to be knocked down at least like twice or three times. There's a few
yep,
different animations of when you get knocked down. I think like the harder it is to get back up, that's when you know you're like really close to be dying. And then I think the first time you go down, it's like easy to get back up, which is really nice. It feels like it adds like an intensity to this combat that I've never really seen before in a
yep,
game.
and they do great with that. They because once you're after your first time or your second time getting knocked down, which I didn't even realize you could get up until halfway through the game, so I was just
You're
letting
just
myself
like, I'm
die.
dead.
I accept my death.
I'm dead.
After you get knocked down, I believe it's for the second time, they take away your roll ability, and it severely decreases the range that you can jump back as well. So they're
Yep.
almost like not hindering you, but showing that you're exhausted, you're damaged. It's getting a little bit harder to fight the more that you get knocked down.
Yeah. Which is really cool. Like it's and then along with the voices in your head saying, "Get back up, you got this, keep going." It's like, I might be crazy, but I am hella strong. I could do this. Crazy is also, you know, I mean that in a general sense. I don't want to be insensitive to anyone out there that is actually struggling with psychosis. I know that this game has made me way more empathetic to those suffering with that. And I don't want to discourage anything by saying, she's crazy. Like, she's actually really struggling. And there's more will go on to that later, but just a disclaimer. I don't mean to be insensitive.
Yeah, so with that we can jump right into the start there. So Melina Jurgens, I hope I'm saying that right. I believe most of the studio is Irish, UK, that area.
Well, it's based out of Cambridge, so I'd guess mostly UK. It's based in
Okay.
UK.
Yep. They seem like they mostly had British accents, but I thought maybe with the Celtic lore there was some Irish there. But yeah, Melina Jurgens is the voice actor for this. And this is her only credited role for anything really. She's a video editor for Ninja Theory, and she was taking place as the mocap person for a while, just so that they had a face to develop some things with. And then eventually she just stuck with the role, and
She
she
did
became our
really
lead
great.
actor here.
Yeah, the motion capture, the voice acting was just on par for this game. And they also, I noticed they saved a lot of money on models because all the other story characters in this game were actually real actors, like not 3D rendered at all. They were just kind of in there, which is, if you didn't, like, you can notice it, but it doesn't really take away from anything because they're just there.
Yeah, I noticed that right away that they were live actors, especially with Druth in some of the earlier cutscenes.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is just an actual person. It seemed a little cheesy at first, but I think I got into the story eventually with those parts.
Yeah, I thought it was super cool. So
And they also got right into the brunt of it during the intro credits. So you start off, you're in a log boat and you're sailing through the woods into a swampy area. And as the credits are playing, as you're hearing the voices in your head as you're sailing, some of the first two credits you see are for the mental health advisors and for the history advisors. And they talk about this a lot in some of the behind the scenes content as well, how much they relied heavily on their both historical and mental health professionals that they worked with. And that's just very important stuff. And they show you right out of the gate what they're going for in this game: historical accuracy and mental health awareness.
yeah, and that's basically what you get out of this too. It's more of an experience rather than, to me, it felt more of like just like an experience that I'm glad I had, but not really a fun game to pick up and play. It was more frustrating. Like the puzzles in this game were kind of frustrating, but other than that, I thought it was great. But the intro was also pretty. It was pretty long. I think that river had to have been like a mile, is what it felt like.
Yeah, 1 nautical mile.
1 nautical mile. Is that longer than actual miles? Land miles?
No, I believe they're a little bit shorter.
Okay.
But yeah, so let's start us off here. So we're sailing on that boat as the narration plays. We're hearing both some of the voices inside our head and the whispers, and then we're also hearing the darkness in our head, which we come to find out later in the game is actually our father's voice. That's not revealed till almost to the end of the game.
So was the darkness? I thought the deep voice that was in her head, I thought that was her father.
Yeah, yep. The one that usually just says like darkness or shadow
Yeah.
as the credits. Yep, that was her father.
Oh, okay.
I didn't realize that till one of those final cutscenes where they actually showed her father, and then I was like, oh, it's the same voice. And then he was standing next to her at one point in one of the cutscenes later that we'll get into.
Okay. So that was all credited at the beginning too?
The different voice actors, I'm not exactly sure. I mostly just
Oh.
pay attention to those first two things I mentioned.
Oh, okay. All right. Cuz I guess I didn't get a solid introduction of like who was what until like later on in the game when it was actually revealed, but
Yep, same for me. So we dock on kind of a swampy area and start working our way through the woods. We're just walking through leisurely. You're kind of learning the controls, how to run, how to walk, just on your own. And the voices are talking to you as you're going through the woods. And then eventually they start to pick up. The darkness starts to come in. All the woods start to turn black, and you have to start running. So you run for a while as the darkness is picking up, and eventually you come to a clearing where you make it out of the woods. You escaped the darkness. I assume, or from my thoughts, that that's her dark thoughts coming in.
yeah,
She's trying to escape them.
I think this is the like the first part cuz according to the story, she goes to village in, was it the Northmen? The Northmen raided her village, right?
Yes, correct.
And so she's going back to her own village that was raided, right?
Yes, before this boat ride, but we don't find that out till later.
Okay. That was before the boat ride.
Yep, right after her village was burned and she finds Dillion, her beloved, that's when she starts to go back onto this journey to go get him from the underworld,
Oh,
or
okay.
from the Norse underworld, hell.
Okay. Yeah. So already from what she saw that triggered her trauma. Then she went off the deep end, and now she's actually dealing with the psychosis that came with that. And that's when it kind of sets in that tone whenever you get off the boat and start walking.
Yeah, yeah, she's having traumatic issues that we're seeing right away. But I think throughout the game, we find out that even before the destruction of her village by the Norsemen, she's been dealing with psychosis. It's been heavily implied that it's possibly schizophrenia.
It's a combination of different things. I think it's schizophrenia, delusions. I think that's about it.
Yeah, yeah, and you do get the delusions with schizophrenia as well.
Oh, really?
Sometimes auditory and sometimes visual,
Oh,
and that's part of the reason they consulted a lot with some of their mental health teams is to try and actually narrow down symptoms, what real people with schizophrenia feel, and they tried to make everything as accurate as possible while still being sensitive to the topic to bring awareness to it,
mm-hmm.
to not
Yeah,
glamorize it or also shame it.
yeah. And the puzzles, they do make a lot of sense after realizing that too. Everything in this game is pretty intentional on symptoms of psychosis and mental health in general, stuff like that.
Yep.
But the puzzles is the main one where it kind of highlights that.
Yeah, we'll get into a lot of puzzles, and they tend to get a little repetitive at times, but they deal a lot with perspective on how you view things,
Yep.
seeing things in a certain way to make it her reality, and just different things like that. So
Yeah.
as we get out of the forest, we come out of the woods right outside of Helheim, or we see at least the bridge to get to Helheim, and then the city off in the distance. You also notice on our character, they don't ever really acknowledge a lot of the little details. It's up to you to realize these yourself. She has a circular rune on the right of her belt, and that's what we use to use our focus once that
Yep.
recharges up. It's not really explained. I assume it was some sort of Celtic rune that helps give her some powers of the gods, but it's
Yeah,
not
the
really
focus combat
discussed in the game
is
at all.
super fun though.
Yeah, is
So
very great.
when you use focus, time slows down and you're able to like do all sorts of combos. The enemies can't really deflect or anything. It depends on the enemy. I think there's one enemy that can actually deflect what you're throwing at him during focus. I think it's like the berserker
Yes,
one. He can move really
yeah.
fast.
Some of those that move faster, I think all their moves are just slowed down, so the berserker still kind of moves at like a half speed type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah. Uh yeah, like you said on discovering when you could do certain things. I didn't know that you could use focus until the first boss fight. I don't know if it was available to use before that, but that's when I discovered it cuz the voices were telling me to focus and I'm like, "What? How do I focus? I am focused. What am I going? What am I doing?" So and then I just started pressing buttons until that happened. I'm like, "Oh, that's how I do it." Because I think with Socher, he turns on fire. He's the
Yeah,
fire god.
yeah, and that brings up another good point. The voices, while through most of the game, they're also trying to derail you and tell you incorrect things. There's about 3 or 4 voices that you're hearing. There is 1 or 2 that you'll occasionally hear that are trying to help you. This helps a lot in combat when you're facing multiple attackers. You'll hear behind you or something like that right
Oh, yep,
before you should
that
dodge
helps out
or
a
parry
lot.
away.
Yep,
I use that one a lot, or them just giving you hints to puzzles and stuff like that. And at a certain point, you almost start to tune out the voice. So you have to really keep attention to it and hear what they're saying and pick out which lines are real and which ones are just trying to lead you astray.
yep.
Because there's a lot of times they'll tell you to do something that's going to get you killed as well.
Yeah, I can't really remember it, if they do tell you things that'll get you killed. It doesn't happen often. Maybe because I
Yep.
kind of maybe that's when the point where I tune them out. But yeah, they kind of have like all these narrations on different things that you're doing in the game. So that's when I kind of learned to tune them out because they're kind of just like saying like, "Oh, how is she doing this? How's she doing that? How's she gonna do this?" I'm like, I know what I'm about to do, you know. But they are a nice touch. I'm really glad they're there. They definitely add to it.
Yeah, it's like it's a way to give you some tutorials without holding your hand or putting prompts on the screen, and it's a real narrative reason for them to be there
Yeah,
for your character.
absolutely.
We'll also notice on the left side of our hip, opposite from the rune, we have a head that's covered in cloth. For most of the game, you don't really know whose head it is. I was thinking some Clash on the Titans type of thing, like we're carrying
I
a
had no
seer with
idea.
us.
I honestly thought it was a bag of money or something.
And then Senua, talks to it occasionally. And I think about a third throughout the story, it's kind of revealed that it's Dillion's head, but you don't really know until later.
Dillion, her
Yeah,
sacrificed
Dillion.
lover.
Indeed. So this is getting into late game stuff, but for you to understand some of the story, we'll explain who Dillion is. So Dillion's her lover. So Senua has been very homebound by her father. Her mother died due to the darkness, is what we're understanding to be probably her own mental illness that got
Yeah.
passed down to Senua.
Yep.
But her father, probably due to the shame of losing the mother and just kind of being an asshole throughout the story, he keeps her very homebound throughout most of the game for the prequel. And eventually she does go out at some point and she met Dillion. And he
And then
realizes how good of a
he's
fighter
like,
she is.
"A boy? You're seeing a boy? Huh? I can't have this. You are mentally ill. You'll kill him. You'll kill everybody." That's basically what he says. He basically reiterates the fact that, just makes her feel worthless and something is terribly wrong with her. Everything is her fault. It's just a very bad upbringing. And it also adds to the amount of trauma she has, right up to the point where she gets set off the edge by what happens to her lover.
Yeah, so that's what her father's telling her is she doesn't need a boy, just needs to stay at home or she'll get people killed because of her illness, or she'll pass it on to other people. So eventually, Senua and Dillion start to be a thing. She likes him. She's trying to get out. He helps her with her mental illness, and he's a really good crutch for her to lean on, and he's really supportive of her. But at some
All
point,
nice to
they have a
have.
falling out. They have a falling out at some point, and she goes into the wilds or to the forest to find herself to get away after they had a fight. I believe it was caused by the death of Dillion's father. Some of the cutscenes are a little back and forth in the timeline,
Yeah, that's
but
I'm just listening to you right now because you seem to be understanding them. That like the cutscenes were not translating well. I might be stupid. I probably am, but they just did not translate to me as well as you did apparently.
yeah, they bounce back and forth in the timeline, and not only that, you'll see the same cutscene in multiple ways, revealing more information. So yeah, at one point, Dillion's father dies due to a plague. We don't ever really find out what the plague was, if it was just a sickness or something related to mental illness.
It was
But Dillion's father
bubonic plague.
dies, and that's when they seem to have the falling out. She goes into the wilds for a while. Eventually, she comes back. The whole village is burned down. Everyone's dead, and she walks through the end of the village to see Dillion, and he's been blood eagled by the Norse.
Blood
And if you don't
Eagle.
know much, if you don't know much about Norse mythology, I wouldn't suggest googling blood eagle. It
Very brutal.
is a kind of a sacrificial procedure of taking like the flaps of the back and pulling them open to be, you
It's
look like
like
an eagle at the end,
very
basically.
it's like a very hardcore metal crucifixion.
Yeah, it's the way you do not want to die, for sure.
Yeah. Funny story about this. I was trying to explain this game to one of my coworkers, and I forgot the what it was called. I forgot it was called a blood eagle, and I said it was called a spread eagle. So yeah, I'm like, yeah, she's going through the woods trying to find her lover that's been sacrificed through the spread eagle, and then I'm like, oh shit, that is not what it's called. That's actually like a sex position, and
Yeah.
yeah, so it probably doesn't sound as brutal as it did in my head. That's probably why they gave me that weird look. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
Dillian's
funny
just he's
story.
just chilling, spread eagle open, he's just ready for us.
he's just he's chilling.
He's just ready. But yeah, she so yeah, not good. She adds to her trauma to no fault of her own, but she does feel the guilt of the fact that she wasn't at the village when this happened.
That that was the breaking point apparently, because that's when the psychosis started. She might have been traumatized before, but now it's just that's it. All hell
Yeah,
broke
she
loose.
exactly. She had Dillian to rely on. He helped her with the mental illness, and now that she's lost him, she kind of reverts back to her ways where she feels like she's listening to what her father says. As you see throughout the game, you'll hear more of the darkness talk to you than Dillian.
Hmm.
She kind of falls back in her ways of listening to her father, who kept her trapped for so long.
Yeah,
But that
and
starts her on her journey where she heads to Helheim because she knows the Norse did this. So she's going to go to the Norse god to get Delian's soul back, and which is why
did
she
they
brings his head.
did they ever explain like how she found out that going to Helheim would bring him back?
That was Druth, yes.
Truth
She
said
runs
that.
into him in the wilds,
That's right.
and all of those rune stones, which are the collectibles throughout the game that we find, are Druth's stories
Yep.
to us that we heard from him.
Yeah, which are very nice.
Yeah, he's the one that pretty much tells us all about the Norse lore and kind of sets us on our journey of who to go kill.
Yeah, it's the kind of collectibles that I like. So you could just go up to these stones and focus on them, and then he'll start talking. And while he's talking, you could go around and do whatever you need to do. Usually, they're like set in places where you're doing a puzzle, anyways. So you find this collectible, you let him do it as you're doing the puzzle. It's nice. It's a nice, relaxing little story bit he has to say.
Yeah, it's all real Norse lore, which is great because Norse lore is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And they do these collectibles really well. They're not super hidden. They're almost
No,
always decently in
they're
the
pretty
path
easy to
of where you're
find.
going.
Yeah, and especially
The
since
audio works great.
audio does work great. Yeah, I don't know if did you play this game with headphones on?
I mixed back and forth. I'd say most of my sessions I did play headphones on because there's a lot of
Okay.
audio that's a little hard to pick up with standard speakers.
Yeah, that's probably how you were able to hear so much about what the voices were saying, because I was playing this just on my TV without any headphones, and they say at the beginning of the game they say this is best with headphones because they have the binaural recording. So it's like actual like 3D audio coming from these voices. And I sadly did not get to experience that, but I'm sure you had the pleasantry of hearing the voices as if they were right next to your ear.
Yeah, they do a great job with the 3D audio there. This is definitely a must have is headphones for this because anytime I just listen to it out of my general speakers, it doesn't work as well. And I'm also kind of hard of hearing, so I do subtitles, so that might have helped on picking up some more stuff in the game.
Yeah, I also had subtitles, but they don't. voices don't really translate to subtitles all the time. That's one thing.
No, there was quite a few I did notice that they would say something and their subtitle would be similar, almost like it was translated.
Yeah,
And
or like
then
condensed into
yeah,
like a shorter
you'd
sentence or something.
be missing a few words. Yep.
Yeah,
But for the most part you get the gist of it, I guess, from the subtitles.
yeah,
But yeah, the audio tracks all were great whenever you're listening to those rune stones. I think there was only one time where it was close to a cutscene or like a close to a part where Senua was talking and where she overlapped it and cut them off. But for the most part, every other runestone in the game was spaced in a way where you could just focus on it and then walk away and listen to it while you're doing your puzzles. And
yeah.
that was just perfect.
Some of them would like I don't know if you ever had this problem, but like some of them I would activate and then I would just go too far away and then it would stop. So I kind of
Yeah,
you kind of have to be
there
in a
was a couple of
general
those.
area, but the area is so wide that sometimes I get confused on like how I could actually get that far away for it to stop. Maybe it just went too long, but
Yeah, but for the most part, I'd say like 80-ish% of them are just placed perfectly and you'll listen to them with no problems. I just took the opportunity of while I was listening to them to take notes, so I didn't risk going away from a couple of them. But
yeah,
yeah,
that's
the
a
audio and the
good idea.
stories from those are all really good.
Yeah, and they're all pretty much real. I mean, they are real Norse mythology. You know, little story bits. So you get to learn about Odin, Ragnarok. You know, the whole fam, Thor,
Yeah,
the whole Norse fam. Nice little touch.
yeah. If you've watched Thor Ragnarok, you'll definitely recognize Surtur as we play here. He'll be like our first boss, sort of. There's kind of a choice in the beginning, but he's a little bit smaller than he is in the movie. But he's there with his big fire sword, and they talk about how Surtur is to assist with bringing Ragnarok upon Asgard and all the other realms.
Was that explained before Sorter or after?
I believe it was after. It's in some of Druth's audio runestones,
Okay.
or maybe it's during those areas.
Yeah.
I can't recall for certain. They kind of bounce back and forth between what stories Druth tells in those, whether they're relevant or not, or a lot of times they do base around Ragnarok though. So yeah,
Ragnarok
to
is
get back to
destruction of
the
Earth, if you don't
yes,
already know.
to get back to the main story here. So we start to run along for a while as we see Helheim in the distance. So we start to get closer to it. We find a big locked gate in a cave that we enter because we're working our way kind of along a shoreline to get down there. That's when we start seeing Druth for the first time. He tells us how to open the gate, and this is kind of one of the only real tutorials, I guess, in the game. He tells us to focus on the gate, and we see a rune there. Basically, this is one of the most common puzzles in the game, where you look at the gate, it's locked, it'll show you a rune on it. You focus on it to put that rune in your mind, and then you have to go find that shape somewhere else in the world, in the area, and then once you find it, it unlocks the gate. So these were pretty cool puzzles that kind of had to make you think. Like you see like little, like maybe the start of an M or something like that, and then you have to view it in a certain way to make it look like a full M.
Yeah,
And those
it's
ones are pretty good.
it could get kind of confusing though because these shapes can be made up of literally anything. It also depends on the certain angle you have to be to actually view the symbol. I guess my problem was not actually seeing it. So they could be made up of anything. It could be a structure, it could be a shadow, a light cast, or just like rubble. forming in a certain shape that when you look at it, it'll make that symbol. Yeah, that these are the puzzles that frustrated me the most, honestly. I had such
I
issues with finding them. This first
I
one
think I had a
was really
couple
easy,
near
but
the end, but for the most part, I think a lot of mine weren't too bad. They do, when you get in a lot of areas of these things, you start to see red runes of the same thing floating in the air. That kind of tells you you're in the vicinity of it.
yeah, those help out a lot.
But yeah, there was the one, the light casting that you're talking about in
Yep.
one of the last chapters, that I would look at it from 8 different angles. I knew, like, I'm like, I see the letter on the wall, but it took me so long to actually get the right angle to figure it out.
Yeah. Getting the right
Some
angle
of them
is
are a bit
definitely the
picky.
most frustrating part. You could be in the same area all day, but you have to get that just right perspective in order to see it. And yeah, that's what I had issues with. I was sometimes it would like I would just quit. I'm like, okay, I'll play later, and then I'll come back to it with a fresh mind.
Yep.
Then I'll probably get a little faster. But like other than that, man, like honestly, not my favorite part of the game. These puzzles, but
Yeah, and they could be completely intentional with their difficulty due to the mental health aspect, but just from a gameplay perspective, they kind of lack a little bit. They take you out
yeah,
of the pacing when you're spending 20 minutes looking for a ruin.
it really
It
does.
just kind of kills the story a little bit.
It builds up this frustration that is really unneeded. I'm like, I can't see it, which I can understand. Well, they did make this point that this is where, people that have delusions, they will see things, they will look at anything and make a puzzle out of it. And then they'll stare at it for a while and try to figure out that there's something there, but they can't figure out what. So if you want to put yourself in that headspace, it makes sense on why they were kind of frustrating, right? So you want to know, like, if you wanted to understand the struggle that these people have of trying to find a puzzle in, something that, or is trying to make a formation out of something that's not really there, then yeah, I get it. But it's still, like, from a gameplay perspective, like, not my favorite puzzle.
Yeah, exactly. So we get through that gate after locking that first rune. There's a lot of beautiful landscapes when we get out here. We hear the voices talking in our head about Hela having the soul of Dillion down in hell. So we come up eventually, after looping more of these landscapes, to another large gate. And this is when the darkness creeps up on us again, like it did in the forest.
Yeah, this is the part where she, like, turns around and, like, looks at the camera as if, like, you were the darkness, and started talking to what like what I would assume be the player. Or I guess maybe they didn't want to actually, like, put something in there for her to look at, so they just, like, yeah, we'll just turn her back at the screen and then have her talk to the darkness. I don't know. That part confused me. I don't know what you got out of that.
Yeah, I think she was talking to us through a lot of points in the game. I think maybe we were just another voice rather than like a fourth wall break type of thing.
Maybe.
But this is the cutscene in the game, probably the most beautiful rendered cutscene and very emotional.
Yeah, very.
We get to this gate and we're starting to beg the darkness for Dillion to come back. And this is where the darkness initially physically infects us. It goes into our arm. We start to look like we rot away,
Yeah.
and it just goes like all the way up to our shoulder, and that's when the first combat starts.
Well, it starts out at your elbow, and then I died a lot. So by the end of the game, like, yeah, it went up to my shoulder and then some. But that's when they started to explain that the more you die, the more the infection spreads. So the more you die, she takes a look at her arm and it'll go up, and it just proceeds to go all the way up her arm. And then they warn you that if it reaches her head, she will be completely consumed in darkness. And I don't know. I probably should have looked this up, but I don't know what happens at that point. Does the game
Uh,
end, or
it does say you lose your save file, but I think it's one of those things that's supposed to mess with you, like everything else through the game. Because my darkness ebbed and flowed. Sometimes it was below my elbow, sometimes it was to my shoulder,
uh,
but I don't think you really ever lose your save from what I've seen.
I think
I
it's
think it's
just
just
like,
supposed to mess with you.
yeah, well, whatever it is, like it definitely added to the intensity of each fight, not wanting to die, because yeah, even if it was a trick, like I feel like that's like a good way to add value to your dying in the game. So obviously, when you get low on health on fights or whatever, it just makes it that more intense to actually take it seriously.
Yeah, not only that, but it is a pain in the ass to redo an entire fight section.
That is
There's
true.
no mid fight checkpoints,
Some of
so you
them
do not want to
are
die.
really long. Yeah.
So this is where these first they're like 7 foot tall men with a deer skull on their head start to appear. You start to fight these guys, and you're kind of just thrown into it to learn your attacks and stuff.
Yeah.
And they're just going to keep spawning till you die.
Yeah, I think
So you're
these
not meant to
guys
win this.
yeah, these guys are difficult in this part, but generally they are pretty easy. They're like the lowest tier enemies that you start off with, and
Yep.
it does set the tone on like the difficulty. I think the difficulty was pretty well managed throughout the game. Honestly, I don't think there was like any huge spikes other than the ending, obviously. But even then, I think it was a little more forgiving. But yeah, these guys make up the both forces. I was under the impression that these guys are like Norsemen, like berserkers, right?
Okay. Yeah, that would make sense.
Because the berserkers are like a special unit per se with the Northmen. They're just fucking huge.
Yeah,
Unless they were
so
all just generally tall, but I don't think that either.
yeah, so we're not supposed to win this section. It's kind of just letting you fight and learn the controls until you get your ass kicked, which you eventually will.
Yep.
The darkness will then completely overcome you in a really gruesome and heartfelt scene. And then you're lying on the ground and you just realize that it was just a vision of what's to come. And there's a couple of that. There's a couple scenes in the game where you'll play out something and it just turns out to be uh, like
Not
a, like a
not even
prevision to what
yeah,
might come.
not even real. Yeah, that was another confusing part to me. I mean, like honestly, a lot of the things were pretty confusing to me, but these especially, they conveyed a lot of emotion. That part was great. I understood how she was feeling, but I just didn't understand like where we're going with this. Like that was the main thing. Is like what is going on? How is this happening? Why is this happening? I think that's also like the point of it too. It's just like you're not supposed to know because
Yeah, they
like
really
it's just
just they
all
throw
in
you
your
into
head.
the deep, and the information really just trickles in throughout the game, and you don't
Yeah,
really understand until the end.
Yeah. And yeah.
Yeah. So after this, we're alive, we're fine. The darkness still takes hold in our arm, and it's just, I think, a little bit past our wrist or something. It's pretty low on your arm. But that'll stay with you through the game. And then we're at this gate. It requires 2 seals to open, and these are different than the runes. This is the only time the game really does this kind of thing. You have to go
Yeah.
defeat 2 gods to open the door, which is Surtur and Valraven.
So
So,
yeah, and
yeah,
then there's 2 doors that go in different directions leading to each of the gods. I did I did the Suitor one first,
which I think
and
is how you're supposed to do it. Because I did Valraven and kicked my ass, and Surtur was so much
there
easier.
yeah, that was definitely the easier one out of the two. Suitor has like this big fire sword that he's very slow and has very slow attacks. Pretty easy to dodge and weave, attack, all that shit until you get to a point where he's just completely on fire. I couldn't figure out a way to defeat him other than using focus.
I believe that was the intention. They wanted us
I
to
think
focus to take out the fire.
okay, maybe that was like the implied uh, tutorial at that point because I literally had no idea that I had focus until that point. I was just literally failing. I think I failed like twice. I died twice trying to do it, other than the third time. That's when I used the focus, and that's when I was able to kill him.
So Surtur is the god that is supposed to bring about Ragnarok.
Thus, the fire.
So we go through his gate, and then we get introduced to a new enemy there. This guy is the one with the helmet, like the conquistador looking helmet, and he's got a big spiked mace.
Oh, yep.
So these guys just hit a little harder, and they take a few more hits to go down, but they're pretty
A
similar to the first
lot.
enemy.
No, man, they take a lot of hits. Don't even hold me, man. They they're tough with the amount of hits you have to give to them. But I mean, if you could use focus to wear them down a little bit, it makes it easier. But I mean, I that's what I'm saying. Like, to say it takes a few more hits is kind of an understatement, because I was just sitting there wailing on these dudes all day and they weren't going down. I mean, they're huge. They're taller than the average enemy. I think they're like 10 feet tall, honestly.
Yeah, they're big boys.
But and they're yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so we get introduced to them, and then some of them have shields. It's the same enemy, except they just have a shield on one arm. These guys are absolute pain in the ass.
They
My
are.
most disliked enemy in the game because they
Yeah.
take so long to take down, as well as blocking half your hits.
Imagine not knowing that you can melee and fighting these guys.
Oh
That's
yeah,
the
the
intended
kicking.
way
Yes.
to defeat them. Yeah, kicking them. Imagine not knowing the intended way to defeat them and just sitting there trying to bust through their shield. I'm like, I can break their shield. I can do it.
I
But
initially
it did
thought
not
that
work.
too. I thought I was taking chips out of it, but I don't think you can actually break the shield.
No. Yeah, the
Uh,
kick would have helped out a lot if I knew that. But yeah.
yep, yep. So we're going through Surtur's gate here. He has fire puzzles, so you have to. His are just very simple. I would say they're not even puzzles. You're kind of just finding these little stones with Surtur's mark on it, and you're focusing on them, and it's bringing you to an area that's just covered in fire, and you just have to make your way out of the fire before you asphyxiate and die,
Yeah,
and then get to
pretty
the gate to get out.
pretty easy. Yeah, that part was really easy.
So you do that for a couple times. I think there's about 3 or so puzzles like that until you get to Surtur himself.
Rule of
He's the
threes.
yes,
They
he's
they
the
really
fire
love the rule of
giant.
threes in this.
They do. He's the fire giant slash like guardian of Muspel, which is the realm of like the fire giants and stuff like that. So he should have been the first boss. I obviously went to Valraven first, but this isn't
Yeah,
too bad of a battle. It's as long as you know how to use your focus and your dodge to get away from his big fire sword. You're pretty easy. Just keep wailing on the guy till he's down.
yeah, it's pretty simple. Just use your intuition. It He just takes a lot of hits. That's how most of the bosses are in this game. They just take a lot of hits. There's not really any like special way to fight them. I think Valraven has a bit more technicality to him than Sudir, but yeah, he's pretty simple.
Yeah. So next we head back. The world after we defeat Surtur kind of looks brighter as we're heading back. I think they do this to add more realism, so there's not just like a gate at the end to open to bring you back to the original area.
Yeah,
They want you to backtrack to where you were, which
yeah,
does add
that
a lot of time to the game. But I do
it
understand
does.
where they're coming from to
Yeah,
not
back
like
and
ruin the
forth.
realism.
Yeah,
So now we go into Valraven's Gate, which I made the mistake of doing first. He's got some pretty complicated puzzles, and this is where I got stuck for a
he
long time.
does. Yes. And so with these puzzles, they are a little more complicated because it's not just like going to find a stone and going back like Sudir's, but in this
Yep.
one, you have to like kind of like the perspective puzzles that you were doing before, but you have to find these. They're
These
ravens,
like
right?
gates. Yeah, you find these
You
gates
find
to
the
look through.
gates. Yeah, you have to find the gates, and you have to find like two pairs of ravens that form a circle onto the gate. So it's another perspective thing, but you have to like get to a perspective where it lines up with the door also in order to open it up. Along with that, there's a lot of like perspective shifting gates, I suppose they're called. Like let's so like things will be there and then you go through this hutch or whatever and they're there. I don't know how to describe
Yeah,
these things.
these things were a pain in the ass for me because sometimes the changes would be so subtle when you look through the gate that I don't know if
Yeah,
I did it right or not. And so I would look around for a while and be like, well, I can't find the way to continue. So I go look through it again and I was like, oh, it didn't change when I went through
they're
the first time.
very they're very subtle
They're very
changes
touchy.
and you have to
Yeah.
look really hard in order to see what was there that wasn't before. Sometimes it's a
Yep.
gate that's open, sometimes it's a bridge that's there, like it could be anything, and that I think that's what adds to the difficulty of it because you don't know exactly what you're looking for through that gate. Sometimes it was something that's there that's blocking your way and you look through that and then it's not there, so it also
Yep. And there
ties into
was
like other puzzles too.
I'm not sure if there was a way, maybe I just missed it, to like tell which ones I've activated because eventually you get through a couple of these puzzles and you get through to this big area. There's a huge gate and there's two versions of Valraven. So Valraven is like the god of, I assume, of just illusion, I think is what they were implying. Throughout this whole section you'll hear his guttural hymn
Mm-hmm.
in like a really creepy song, and he like appears everywhere. And when you try and go to approach him to fight him, it's always just a statue or something or a set of sticks. And, so you're in this final area and you see two of him, and you have to go confirm that both aren't actually him. And you're using these gates to try and make a path by revealing like something that wasn't there. And then, as well as all of that stuff, you're trying to get to a viewpoint to see these ravens to open the gate. So it's
Yeah,
a lot of puzzles all at once. and you lose track quickly of what gates you've looked through, what gates you haven't, because there's about 5 or 6 gates in this area. So you kind of forget what has been opened already. So that threw me off for a while.
Yeah, in this area, it was a lot of just running around, just testing things to see what worked and what didn't. Which what I like to do sometimes, but it was got to a point where I'm like, okay, let's just get on with it. What do I got to do? If telling me what to do would be ruin the whole point of the puzzle. But then again, like this is just a lot at once.
Yeah, they really throw you into it, and again, not to reiterate my mistake, but getting thrown into this one and having the choice to choose Surtur or Valraven, I think really fucked me because I didn't get that introduction into puzzles or combat. It's just right into all this shit.
Just figure it
And
out.
yeah, so this one took me a long while. I think I spent 20 minutes, and I came back to this multiple times on different days, and eventually I found a gate that I hadn't looked through before, that I thought I did, and that was the reason I was stuck.
Man, it's always the worst, isn't it?
Yeah.
Knowing you could have done something
So
before, but you just missed it. You just glanced over it.
the to backtrack a little bit, I wanted to mention Valraven's first appearance. So you're going through like these woods, and you start to get introduced to Valraven's song playing in the background.
It's very creepy.
Very creepy. And I was like, this is starting to border in horror territory. You get to this one little
Yeah.
clearing where you see him for the first time, and you start to approach him, and that's when he disappears. And then I believe some enemies appear behind you instead. And this whole area was just creep fest to me.
Yeah.
Just I loved it. It was great other than the puzzles.
Very dark tone at this point. It was so good. I am a huge fan of horror games, but although I didn't really feel like super scared through this, I was just kind of creeped out. Like Valraven just like is so brooding and intimidating looking. He's just very creepy. He looks like he has his giant beak and he's covered in like all these distorted feathers and he's got really thin legs and
Yep.
yeah, he's just
Just a big bird
gross.
man.
Grody. Yeah,
Yeah,
Big
he's
Birdman.
super
Not
cool.
Big Bird. Not that one.
No, maybe if Big Bird made illusions of himself and
Maybe
tried to
if
murder you, but
Big Bird was homeless for 20 years and never took care of his feathers and dyed them black and became a serial killer after that. Maybe that's close to what Valraven looks like.
yeah,
But
this just super creepy area.
yeah.
So you finally get to that final gate that we're talking about. Difficult puzzles, you get through it. Valraven gives us a bit of a spook. So we get to this big auditorium looking thing, and you're like, okay, it's boss battle time. So you
Right.
do a couple more puzzles in here, and then you see Valraven. You go to approach him, and it just turns back into one of his other spooks again.
Mm-hmm.
His little tree things. And then
They look
as
like
we're
little
approaching it,
scarecrows.
yeah. And as we're approaching it, we kind of go into a cutscene, and Valraven himself appears behind us and kind of fucks us up because he gets to jump on us.
This scene really creeped me out. Like this, yeah. That ugh.
Yeah, it jumps definitely more into the creep factor with Valraven, not knowing what's real. And I kind of wish they played more with this horror aspect. They do in a couple other areas, but this area was just one of the best in the game for the creep factor alone. And so yeah, we kind of jump into a boss fight after this cutscene. We start to fight Valraven, who, if I knew I had focus, would have been a lot easier. But he's kind of a pain in the ass to fight. He'll like dive at you, he'll hit you, he'll take some damage from you, and then he'll try and teleport away for a little bit and send some of his goons after you, any of the other enemies you faced to this point.
Yeah, he's
Uh,
definitely a lot more tougher than Surtur. But I
Yeah,
think I think after you get his attack patterns down, just like any other boss, but once you get it down, he's not bad. One big thing that I noticed with him, like, have you deflected his like shurikens or whatever he throws at you?
I was gonna say I did have a tough time dodging those. I tried to roll, and then every time the second one would still hit me. I didn't try to deflect them
Yeah,
though.
you can deflect them and it'll go straight back at him.
Okay,
So when you
that
do
would have
that,
helped too.
yeah, he'll get injured there for a little bit. So he's like kind of stunned for a few seconds. So you can go in and do some damage, which helped out a lot. But when he
Okay,
does the
this was
two, when he shoots the two out, that's you gotta dodge those. You can't. Hell no.
yeah, I had trouble. I just I couldn't time it right where I'd roll too early and I'd dodge the first one, and then as I get back up from the roll, the second one hits me in the back of the head,
Yep.
and then I get stunned and he'd come whack me. And I died quite a few times in this section just due to learning the controls still, since it was only like my third combat encounter. And it was a little annoying because you would go back to the very start of the whole battle.
Yep.
Valraven has about 3 sections here, rule of
Yeah.
three.
3 phases.
Uh,
Yep.
so you fight him, fight goons, fight him, fight goons, fight him, win.
Yeah. He is.
It
He's pretty
does
tough.
play a lot better than that in the actual gameplay, but it, yeah. So once you
Yeah.
get the controls down, it's a lot easier. Just the learning curve is a bit steep at the start.
Honestly, I wasn't too confident with the controls or controlling my character until damn near the end of the game. It was just, yeah, it was a learning curve for me. The combat was pretty intuitive. I mean, if you there's like different levels. I want to say there's like a basic level of understanding, which is just being able to block, being able to attack. But then there's like, you know, and it kind of goes into it. It like kind of subtly teaches you different aspects on like how to do combat throughout the game. Like for instance, knowing that you could kick for those shield
The
guys.
shield guys, yep.
Yeah, the shield guys also helped out a lot with other archetypes too. And pretty much by the end of the game, like you're pretty much mastered on all the combat. Because it's just combat and puzzles, the basic survival horror game.
Yeah, so after we defeat Valraven, it's similar to Surtur, where the world gets all sunny and nice, where before it was dark and gloomy. You start heading back, you backtrack through the whole area that you came through to get here. You get back to the gate, where you finally have both seals from Surtur and Valraven to open the gate. And then you have. Sorry, this is where I got introduced to the. What do you call him? The guy with the helmet and the mace. Is after defeating Valraven, because then I went to Surtur,
Oh, yep. Yeah.
and then I was back. So I think it's after your first god that you kill.
Yeah, it's just another general enemy they'll throw at you throughout the game.
Yep. So yeah, you're back to the main gate there, which you can now unlock, and this is the bridge to Helheim itself. The game does move pretty quick. You're like, wow, I'm already at Helheim. That was a quick journey.
Right.
It's not a
Yeah.
very long game.
I think Helheim itself was what takes most of the game. So I think it only escalates from here.
Yep, yep. So we go back into a cutscene before we even get to walk across the bridge, and this is when we go back to that cutscene where we were in our village and it was burning, and then that's when we seen Dillion. So it's kind of feeding this the information throughout the game. So then this is supposed to kind of spark you into some motivation. Oh, Dillion was murdered. Well, now I have a whole bunch of rage and feelings about this. And so now they're like, okay, Now go across this bridge, and we're about to introduce a whole lot of enemies to try and kill you.
Yep. Yeah, that was a long fight. Going across the bridge, but like that was like what you said. It had a whole lot of inspiration behind it because like I was determined. I was sprinting at all the enemies, you know, killing them all. It was a lot of fun. I think that's when someone is like determined to get through all this is when I actually feel like I play better because like I get so much more aggressive style play. Because at first, like they came up and they're just towering over me, and I'm like, oh shit, these guys are gonna be tough to kill. But like after killing a few of them, I felt like they got like they felt smaller. Like, oh, I can actually kill these guys pretty efficiently. So this adds a little fire behind it.
Yeah, and I think the more that Senua gets into it as well, it almost feels like the combat flows smoother. Some of these areas feel like they get easier. I don't know if it's just the more experience with the fighting combat, or if it actually just gets a little easier in some of these moments.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but it did feel like that because I remember at the end it was very forgiving with the
Yeah,
combat.
for sure. It gets. I think it did because I was counting a lot of the hits it took for certain people, and I think those in that last section, the lowest level guys was only a one hit kill.
Yeah, so like less hits to kill, you recover a lot faster from getting let down. So like I guess it's the combat is a part of like the story in a sense. So
Yeah, it's very narrative based, and the emotion changes how it
yeah,
plays.
and that I think that's really cool. There's nothing that really kills your vibe more than just dying as soon as you get super inspired to do all this crazy
Yeah,
shit.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. So it was definitely a good choice on Ninja Theory's end. So we're fighting our way across this bridge. You're just facing all the goons that you've seen to date, and once we get to the far side, this is kind of like the middle area of the bridge. Usually, there's like a tower in the middle. We open the gate, and then we immediately get ambushed by a new enemy. So this is the big Resident Evil looking motherfucker. He's got this big potato sack over his head, and he's got a really large axe. He looks like the guy from the Resident Evil movies with the big axe that wants to kill him.
Oh, you know what? That was okay. All right, I want to clarify. I thought that was the guy we were talking about with the mace. Now it's making
Oh,
sense now. The mace
yeah,
guys are kind of the same guys with the shield, but they just don't have a shield. But this is the big guy I was talking about that takes so many hits to
yeah.
kill. Okay.
This one takes a lot. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
a big guy. You really have to watch his swings because he has a large radius. You have to really just get behind him. He's very slow.
A lot
Just
of
keep jabbing
dodging.
him in the back.
Yeah.
You know, but he's not too difficult of an enemy unless he's mixed with other people, and then it starts to get to a pain to dodge him,
Oh
dodge everyone
man.
else.
Yeah.
It
And they
gets
like to do
intense when
that
there's
too. They
multiple
like to
people.
throw all of them at you at once.
Yep.
And it's mainly like what I found is just like classic the same way I would play like Witcher 3 is just keep everybody in front of you and I think you'd be fine.
Yeah, yeah. For the most part, if you can group everyone in front of you and try to even hit multiple people with one swing, you'll do fine.
And that's also
Just
what
don't
I
let people
like.
get behind you. Don't get cornered.
Yeah, they also had the whole thing with the swings being like super wide with Senua. So
Yeah,
if there is two enemies in front of you, they'll both get hit just by just a light attack. I
yep.
think the heavy attacks they go like up and down, so they
They go
wouldn't do a
vertical.
swipe attack.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a one person, but it does like a couple times the damage. And I kind of
yeah.
stuck with heavy attacks throughout most of the game, just because I'd try and stun people, try and kick them or focus, and just wail on them with heavy attacks.
Yeah.
And I saved light attacks for some of those big bosses when I didn't even have the time to do a full swing for the big attack.
Yeah. That makes sense too. The heavy attacks are definitely worth it if you have time to do them. They take, a little bit more time to execute, which also you got to
Yep.
take into account. But also, I don't know if you ever noticed this, but there is actual combos that you could do.
I seen the runes pop up on the screen, but I don't think I've ever mastered it.
Well, I figured out a little bit of it. So there's like different combos depending on, you know, when you press heavy attack and light attack throughout your combination. So let's say you do two light attacks, two swipes, and then you press heavy attack to do a heavy attack. So when you do that, I think she turns around and like stabs them, and then I think that goes into a different branch of like different attacks that you can do. So once you do that, you can finish it off with a bunch of light attacks, or you can do some more heavy attacks to do some massive damage. So like comboing them together, honestly, is like so cool. Like it adds to the whole like combat. Like what I said before, like the combat is really a highlight of this game. Like I love it so much.
Yeah, the combat is just stellar here. It's innovative, and I haven't played Devil May Cry. I don't know if it's is it anything similar from that, or is this something that they're going into new ground here?
It is kind of, but I mean, Devil May Cry is definitely a lot more arcadey and vertical. A lot of
Okay,
jumping and all that too. So I guess if it's a more
so this is a
grounded
lot
version of
slower
kind
here.
of DMC, it's not as extensive as DMC. I want to say that because they like the combos that you could do in that are way more extensive because that's mainly what the game is combos and how well you can string them together and stuff. Not as cool as that
Yeah.
game, but for what it is, like it's great. I love it.
Okay, so after we defeat the big dude with the axe, Mr. Resident Evil dude,
Yeah.
and all of his goonies that attack at once, we get back to that door. There's a door on the opposite side that we came in, and it's got a bunch of runes on it. So we got another rune puzzle to go around the room and solve.
More runes. Man, these
It,
ones are actually a lot more easier though. I enjoyed these because they all take place right in the middle there, right? And
yeah, this is
so,
the one where it's all. I think they all relate to the same thing. Like
yeah.
it's all the same piece of wood.
So
You
that
just
part
look at
was
it from
really
different
nice.
directions.
As long as you just you're able to figure out the route you need to take to get all of them,
Yep,
shouldn't
yep.
have much of a
It
problem
almost
with
looks
it.
like a bell tower type of thing. Like it goes straight up, and you just work your way around doing the puzzles, viewing it from
Yeah,
different directions.
is yeah. I like that. That was pretty easy for me and kept it pretty smooth. Contrary to the puzzles before this, I think this is the point where the puzzles start to make more sense onto how to find them, and then I think
Yeah.
it goes smoothly from now on.
Yep. Yep. So we get our three runes. We open the gate, and it's the other half of the bridge. So we make our way down the bridge. I don't think we had to fight anyone else on this part. I think we just make our way down the bridge, and then there's of course another gate at the end. This game really loves gates.
Yep.
And then at that point, before we even get to the gate, is when Hella bursts through. We try to fight her a little bit, but she immediately kicks our ass, of
Yep.
course.
Well, we didn't even
And
get to fight her. Like, there was a bunch of like you were running at her, and there was a bunch of enemies coming at you. And at
oh,
this
yep.
point, Sueno was super. She's like super eager to take her down. She's like, "I have a sword that can kill gods," and I was like, "Oh hell yeah!" So you're just fighting through all these enemies and
Well, that
going to
was
go
not
get
this
her.
part yet.
Oh,
We get
Oh,
the sword later.
oh, fuck. Okay. First time you see Hella. All right.
Yes, yes. This is when we still have our basic sword, and then she pretty much destroys the bridge, kicks our ass off. We land in the water, and then that's when we see our swords broken, and
Yeah, the
that's when we
sword
have to go get
breaks.
the new god sword, god killing
Yeah,
sword.
and that's also in that little sequences where her father's voice, the darkness, was talking to in her ear, and it gets kind of harrowing at this point because you find out she's looking to her mirror and she's like speaking like through that voice into that mirror. And I thought that
Yeah,
was like it was just saying how she was a piece of shit and like she's not going to be able to do it. You know, she's thinking like, you know, it was really saddening, I guess.
yeah.
That
It's well made. She's like speaking to herself through her father's voice,
yeah,
like telling her
and
she's bad.
yeah, and like at that point, it makes you believe that like you know she believes that about herself, and that's like why she's saying it into the mirror. That's the vibe I got, anyways, and like you know it kind of if you know if anybody who
Yep,
struggles with depression, you know, and have somebody in their life that says things like that, it really hits home at that in that scene.
exactly. And so we're sitting here, kind of at the base of the bridge. We're not even far from where we got kicked off. But we have a little campfire here. We're trying to rest a little bit after getting our asses kicked. Senua has a large scar on the side of her head that she received from getting knocked off. So she takes what's left of her blade. It's just a little bit of the hilt left. And we kind of put the blade in the fire. And,
Yeah,
you
you
know,
understand what was going on, like, but like at this point, like you don't know what she's about to do with it because, like, after saying all that into the mirror, I'm like, oh shit, she's gonna kill herself. I'm like, oh god, I was freaking out, man, and I didn't know what to expect, but it was actually cauterization. I don't know what
yeah,
I would think otherwise because she was heating up the blade. I don't know, but yeah, it made sense. A wave of relief after the cauterization, even though it looked like it hurt really bad.
yeah.
And
She was screaming a little bit more.
yeah,
More pros towards the voice actor Melina for just an awesome performance all around in this game through
really
the
well
range of
portrayed
emotions.
pain. Yeah,
So yeah, we kind of discard the sword after because it's just a little bit of a hilt and like a partial blade,
yep,
not really useful. So that's where the voices are taunting us there for a little bit. We pass out after the cauterization, and then we wake up when we start to hear Dillion's voice calling out to us, and we kind of see him as like a ball of light sort of thing, and sometimes as a human shaped ball of light,
yeah,
and he tells us to follow him, sort of thing. So we finally get up from the fire. We start to track him down, and this is when we're in the ship graveyard.
yeah.
So we're
The
kind of
ship
just making our
graveyard.
way through there.
Yeah,
So this,
this turned into like a walking sim. There's not much that goes on at this part. It was mainly just going around and following the the human shaped ball of light, so to speak, uh,
yeah,
through the whole graveyard, and I think eventually leads her to the tree.
yeah, it is like you said, it's a walking simulator for quite a while here. We're just following Dillion. He's talking to us, and we're just walking through the shipyard, some beautiful areas, and then eventually we see him at the tree. And then once we get there to the tree where this ball of light is when we get transported back into like like a pre-cut scene of this same area because this
Yep.
is the tree where we met Dillian at.
Yeah.
So after this very cute scene
It was very
of
cute.
us being super shy, because obviously Senua's been trapped in her home for most of her life, very secluded from everyone. But she obviously likes this boy. She's been watching him for a while, and he seems to like her. It's kind of their intro to kicking off their relationship, and everything's just super happy. Everything's sunny and flowers, and
Yeah, it was great. Very
we get
pleasant.
transported back to the exact opposite. The tree is on fire. Our shadows taunting us, and everything's black around us. The whole world just looks burnt and dead.
Yeah, it pulled. It was
It's
very
very
an
stark.
abrupt pull from the pleasant flowers and trees and sunlight. Sunlight's not much as what you see in this game.
Nope, you only really see it in pre flashback cutscenes.
Yeah, exactly.
So we see the tree now as it is in our current reality, and we approach it trying to remove, what's it called, Grammar? Gramr, the god killing sword. I'm not exactly
Ah,
sure how to
yeah.
pronounce
I think
that.
I think that's what it's called. The grammar. Yeah.
Okay. And then we try to pull it out because it's like the ball of light went into there, and we find out that the sword's not actually like there. It's in shards, and we have to go find all of the pieces to put it back together.
Yep. And
So
then
there's four
so
pieces.
is there four pieces? I thought there was three.
No, there was actually four pieces, which threw me off because I was like, oh, they broke up the rule of three there.
Yeah. Okay. I thought there was I think
Yep.
I saw
So
three at first. I'm like, okay, there's three, and then there was all of a sudden a fourth one after I completed the third one. I'm like, okay,
yep.
this is different.
So there's four rune stones around the tree that you pretty much just focus on them, and it'll teleport you to an area. This I think is the one and only time that there's like teleportation type of thing where it takes us to a different land.
Yeah,
And each of the four is like a different unique type of puzzle. So I went to the first one that was closest to me first, just to do them in like order of distance.
I think that's exactly what I did too.
And that's the labyrinth shard is the first one, is where we go into this cave. It's super dark, so we grab this torch on the entrance, and there's kind of just two paths, and we just having to keep choosing one of two paths to make our way
Yeah,
out.
and this part was really interesting because each time you hit one of those crossroads of the two paths, it looks exactly the same. So it looks like you're going in circles.
Yep.
Depending on which path you take, I can't really know if you're actually going the right way each time you pick a path because it always seems like it just takes you around in circles for a little bit before it actually lets you progress.
Yeah, what I learned, I don't know if this is the right way to solve it, is I was lighting the torch in the middle of the two paths,
Yeah.
and sometimes you would see it reflect in one of the other paths. So you knew that that path to the left where the torch lit up was actually just a reflection of this path. So then I took the dark path to the right because that means I hadn't been there before.
Is that what you did?
Yeah, and I seem like I found my way out after only like four or five sets of those. So I felt
You
like that was
probably
the
did
right
it the right
choice.
way. I did the same thing. I lit the sconce the sconce
Yep.
every time I went into a room, but I kind of just picked randomly which way I should go. I probably spent more time there than I probably should have, but yeah, I made my way out eventually. I mean, it's like not really a puzzle that's like mind-boggling. I think it's just kind of like a trip.
Yeah, it doesn't require a whole lot of thought to get through this one, but you do find the final path, and you come up to this big red gate, or it's like a big wooden gate, and there's a big emanating red glow from behind it. So as soon as we open this gate, we go into another flashback to where we're talking to our father. And this is kind of where we find out that he kept her inside for most of her life, tried to keep her trapped, said he knows what's best for her.
Yeah.
He abuses her throughout her life, both emotionally and he's, as you see in this cutscene, physically as well. He slaps her.
Yep. Yeah, he's kind of a piece of shit. He's
Yep. Yeah.
he thinks
Not a
he
good person.
knows what he's doing, but he doesn't, and he like back in the time where nobody knew much about anything about mental health, uh, he condemned her as cursed. So, in order to protect
Yep.
everyone else in the village, he kept her hidden away and basically thought of her as less than because, she was cursed, which wasn't actually the
Exactly.
case, but, it was a different time.
Yeah, he specifically says that she has a plague and that he'll make anyone near her suffer, which I think is where it got confusing to me, the usage of plague, because when Dillion's father died, I didn't know exactly what the representation meant, if it was an actual epidemic plague or if somehow her mental illness was a cause of his death.
Maybe. I don't know, but with
Exactly
her
explain it.
mother also being so-called cursed,
Yep.
makes me believe that it could have been genetic. It could have been, a combination of traumas just that she picked up on. I don't know. But yeah, Ninja Theory had a whole team of mental health specialists to help out with this game. So whatever they did or whatever they did to tell the story, was definitely intentional,
Yep.
but the
Yep.
exact reason I don't know.
Yeah, so we don't actually grab any of these sword shards. We just see the cutscene at the end of each of these puzzles, and then we're transported back to the tree area, and then we're just implied to have gotten that piece. So then we can go to the next runestone. This next one for me was the swamp area, and I
Yep.
think this one was also pretty easy. It was just a couple perspective things.
Yeah, that's pretty much all it was. There was some combat sprinkled out throughout there too, but really it was mostly just puzzle based. Well, actually, there wasn't any combat through any of these shards, was there? Because it was just we didn't even have a sword. So
No, yeah, we didn't have a sword at this point, so it's like a whole chunk of the game without combat, which felt really nice actually. It was
yeah,
a good break, even though we there wasn't too much combat beforehand. But it almost got you ready for combat again after. Like you're ready to get back into it.
yeah, it was a good break, and yeah, it just seemed like a lot of busy work after probably the third or fourth one because like you're just ready to keep going. But I mean, they all had things that made them interesting, which I really liked. They weren't like the same thing. It was like shuttle runs back and forth. They all had some uniqueness to them.
Yeah, just at the end of this glyph, we get that sword piece again. We get another cutscene. This time discussing between Dillian and Senua. They're talking about the plague around the town and how people were blaming Senua for it. So that's where it could be mental illness and
Could
not an
be.
actual epidemic. Yeah, but yeah, we go back
Not
to our hub
entirely
area.
sure.
There was nothing too special about the swamp area. One that I can recall. Third
No,
runestone
well,
was
okay. So that was I remember the swamp area was the first to introduce the the blending of like all the puzzles with the perspectives and stuff.
okay.
There was a lot of those little gates that made things
Oh
disappear
yes,
there.
yeah, yeah. They had gates. They had the ones where you had to look at them specifically to form the bridge. Yeah, they had a couple different perspective puzzles that mixed them all together.
Yeah, that could happen beforehand too. Yeah. But
Yeah,
yeah, there's
yeah.
not
I
really
just
much to
remembered
remember from that level.
that it was all right. So this third runestone takes us to a small island where we do some more perspective puzzles, and this is a new type of puzzle. We're on a pier, and this is where we go to that metal circle that was like you push a bridge down and then go to that metal circle, and there's a little face, like a little mask that you look through, and then it transports
Oh,
you
yep.
to
Yeah.
pre-destruction of the world, where everything looked green and stuff. And so this opens up some new areas to you, and then you can switch back and forth between destruction, like pre-world and current,
Yeah.
to solve different puzzles.
Well, it was mostly of a it wasn't exactly to solve the puzzles. I think it was more directed towards the traversal of the world because
Yep.
like there would be certain things that would be blocked off in the destroyed world that you could get to the in the what
Yeah, I
was
agree
it
with you like that.
pre-destroyed world.
Like they allowed you to get through gates that were collapsed in the current world, or
Yeah.
stuff like that, bridges that weren't there, or but yeah, they bring you up to like a sort of castle after you do a couple of these. You finally make your way into the castle, and this is the perspective puzzle that I struggled a lot with,
I did too.
where there's the light shining in from the window, and you had to view it so perfectly, and that one just it took me a while.
Yeah, it was the light cast from the window, and I was so confused on how to do this because I was looking for a certain structure, but it
Yep,
was
yeah, I was looking
actually
at the
either
the
that
window
or it
itself.
was a shadow, but it was a light cast that was on the floor. I'm like, what? I yeah, it's always one of those things. Is like you spend so much time looking for other things, and it ends up being not anything that you've looked at before. And it's like, it's just this. How did you miss this? It's like, man, come on. I have to take into account when you do these puzzles, you have to take into account anything possible. That's all I'm going to say.
Yep. Yeah, and it definitely all leads back into the mental illness too, like they discuss in the behind the scenes kind of content, where those that suffer from schizophrenia kind of really see these patterns in things that aren't there, or just see these connections that people wouldn't normally make.
Yeah.
So you really just have to keep your eyes open and keep your mind open, essentially, for any type of puzzle that it may be.
Yeah. It definitely requires an open mind. And this game definitely veers off the beaten path of what makes a game, I guess. That's why I described it more of an experience than, a fun game to play. Like
Yeah, you're
if it
not
was
going
a
into this
movie,
one for a good time.
yeah, it's not for a good time. It's mainly to convey a message, which I thoroughly understood by the end of it. And it's not something I would want to play again, but like I appreciate it for what it is. Something like a movie. When you watch a movie that is meant to bring awareness to something or convey a certain message, it's like, yeah, it wasn't the greatest movie, but I appreciate the message it gave me. And this game honestly covers, like, it's probably the only medium to convey this message rather than like a movie or anything else or a video or something, because it's just that far. There's so many details to it that all have different explanations for them that explain the overall meaning.
Yeah, we see an uptick in mental health in games, especially in later years, but definitely nothing like Hellblade. Hellblade
No.
brings it to a focus, especially schizophrenia, which, if it's ever brought up into games, it's always seen as like a curse. It's seen as a hindrance,
Right.
and not that they don't like portray it in a way that it's hurting you in this game. It's not a great thing for Senua to be dealing with, but it's not. it's not shaming her for what she has, for
No,
her afflictions.
you definitely come into this as more of like a empathic way than you would seeing it in a movie or something, because like you dealing with the frustrations of solving these puzzles, makes you feel like, oh wow, this, it kind of, or the frustration of voices constantly going on in your head while you're trying to do things. It's like, I can only imagine.
Yeah, it's everything in this game is just stellar, portrayed really well. So we get this rune stone, this or not the rune stone, the rune on the floor in the light, and that allows us to go back into the present day and open up the gate. And this lets us go back up into the tower to do more puzzles, and then we find the rune stone from there up at the top. For the most part, this area was just puzzles, just to make you think a little bit more.
Yeah, the top part of the
That's
tower
all I got from it.
was a little difficult because there's a lot of running back and forth between pre and post destruction of the world, and
Yeah, a
you
lot
have
of
to,
backtracking.
yeah, a lot of backtracking. There's a lot of things that you need to set up in one world to get across in the other world, and it, I mean, it makes sense in the end, but it felt like a lot of like filler to me.
Yeah, this was not my favorite shard area for the sword. But once we get up there, we solve those puzzles at the top. We get the shard, and we go back to the hub again. I don't remember there being. I think there was a cutscene at the end of this one too, but I can't remember it being anything
Yeah,
big to the story.
it wasn't that much. Once you get through the gates, well, once you get the shards, you grab the sword, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So this was the third gate. There is one more after this, and this one was my favorite, the Darkness Gate,
Darkness Gate.
or the Darkness Runestone to bring you into the final area for the
Oh,
sword shard.
yeah.
Uh, this is where you go into an area and you're just immediately blind. Senua can't see anything, and she's calling out to Dillian, and he's trying to help her by guiding her through the light, or with his light, but also telling her to use her senses to feel around her, to focus in listen specifically to running water, to things creaking, to try and sense her way out of this cave.
Yep. And that
So
part
this
was
is a
really
really good
cool.
area.
I like that. Yeah. Because you can make out some of the details on what there is around you. Like you could see, like if you focused, you could see, like the running water or blades of grass and like little details in the world that you wouldn't see otherwise with no light. But I think they did it really good there. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and you eventually get to this point where we drop down a well, and then you're introduced to some monsters that are in the cave as well. This
Oh,
part
yeah.
was creepy as shit.
Very
You're
creepy.
still blind. You're walking through, and you can just hear the monsters growling. You can't really even see them. They're just another speck of gray in all this blackness,
Yep.
and you're just trying to avoid them as you're trying to make your way to Dillian's voice. So this area was just done amazing. Good horror aspects here, and really
Yeah.
good change up of the pace of the game.
Yeah. And this was the part. Well, is this the part where those fire sconces come up?
No, I believe that's later with Fenrir.
Oh, okay.
Because once we get through the end, we eventually see there's like monsters all around us, and there's hanging corpses in the room, and you're just trying to make your way through these monsters, and eventually you get to Dillian's voice, and then you get transported back to the tree for the final time.
No, yeah, that is what I'm thinking of. So like before you get to the hanging bodies, there's these fire sconces, and you get to see, like if you focus, you get to see what these creatures look like, and they're like these like amalgamations of like different body parts. and
Oh,
they yeah, they you didn't see them?
I don't think I got to that now.
Oh, well, if you focus, you can see them, and they're like these yeah, they're like these amalgamations of body parts, and they have like a couple of heads, and they have like a bunch of blisters on them, and they're walking around like really creepy like. They're
Oh,
disgusting.
geez. I
Yeah.
guess I'm glad I didn't do that because I didn't really use focus too much through there, even though that was kind of the main point of it. I was trying to
Yeah.
use more of my like audio senses, just because the audio in this game is
Oh, it's
perfect, and
phenomenal.
I was trying to use that to navigate around for the most part, rather than focusing on things. So we're back to the tree. We head back up to the middle of the tree where we originally tried to pull the sword, and it's there this time. So we can pull the sword out, and the darkness is talking in our head again, and it's threatening us. If we take the sword, we'll be doomed. Of course, we ignore the darkness and we pull the sword out anyways.
Always ignore the darkness. Darkness don't know
And
shit.
immediately, this is where we're transported to the next chapter of the game, the sea of corpses. This is a pretty short segment in the game where there's walls of hands all over on your left and right,
Yep.
and you're just in a big pool of blood. And you're just trying to make your way straight down the middle without being touched by them.
Oh man, I was
This is a
thinking
good
that
area.
when I was running through that the hands would actually grab me and do it. So I was like, you know how you do that thing where you got to test it out a little bit, right? Are these hands actually going to grab me? But no, actually, they're just there for show. If you actually try to move into the wall or whatever, there's like an
Don't
invisible
grab
barrier.
you. Oh, yeah.
They don't grab.
I actually did not test it out.
Yeah,
I just assumed that they would grab me, so I stayed down the middle.
yeah. I just wanted to see like what would happen. Like if there would be like some cool cutscene of like a death or whatever. I'm like, I got lives left. I'll do it. Like how they do, the death cutscenes like they do in Tomb Raider
Dead Space. Oh yeah.
and Dead Space. Both of those. They have really good death animations. They're pretty brutal. But yeah, I just
And
wanted to
this
see what
game
would
does
happen.
too. Yeah.
But it
For
doesn't.
a couple of the deaths, they're really good.
Yeah. But really there's only one death animation. I haven't really discovered any other ones. She kind of just falls over to her side and then it fades to black really quickly.
I think there's a couple in Fenrir's I got to, but
Really? Okay. I yeah, I guess I don't know. I've only seen
yeah.
one.
So we kind of get through these walls of arms. They're not too difficult. You just
No.
you're just walking and waiting in the blood.
Yep.
And you start to get to
Bleh.
more open areas where you just see big giant corpses and giant arms all over in like an arena type of thing. And you're just wading through these pools of blood. And then you start to hear your mother scream on the very far side of this area. So you're trying to make your way to her, wading through these pools of blood, and enemies start to spawn. I found this area to be pretty difficult.
It
I died a
was
lot in this
very
area
difficult. Yeah,
because you would fight through waves and waves of enemies, and if you die, you went like
yep,
all the way back to the start of the confrontation.
exactly. And yeah, these combat sequences, they're pretty long.
Yeah.
There was so many times where I thought like, okay, that's got to be the last of them, and then here they come walking around the corner, coming to
Yep.
get me.
And
Is
I'm like, why
like,
is there still battle music?
yeah. So luckily, I mean, you don't really have to guess that that was the last one because as soon as the last enemy is slain, like Senua puts her sword away, and then you're
Yep.
done.
Yeah,
So
that was a really good indicator. It was never you couldn't draw your sword anytime you want. It was
right,
on her.
as soon as when combat's about to start because she'll draw her blade, somebody will peer out of nothingness and start walking towards you. You know what? There is a few enemies. I think that's when they introduced the double axed enemy in this
Yes,
one.
I believe this is around where they introduced the big berserker guy. He's got two small hand axes. He takes a
Yeah,
lot of hits. He's
he
super
does.
fast. He kicks you.
He also
Probably the hardest
goes
enemy in the game.
he goes ghost mode like Valraven. Did you notice that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to
So
focus on him to hit him, and or it stuns him as well if you
yeah.
focus. Found it difficult because I would time it so poorly where I would be using my focus on other enemies, and then he would spawn, and my focus had to recharge for a while. So I'd just be
Yep.
dodging until it was back.
Yeah, there's no like indication on because like with these combat sequences, you don't know if it's going to get harder or like it's going to get easier. So it, you just don't know. So using your focus at the wrong time was a common mistake for me too.
Yep. So we work our way through this just really long fight, and we kind of start to walk over these big tendrils and stuff, and everything's gross, everything's bloody. You eventually reach our mother. She's just one of these other super large corpses in this area.
I thought she was like
And
oh yeah, she was like the big, like
yeah,
probably
she
the
was like
biggest
the
corpse I've
big
seen.
head. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was just the guilt, and I think they also mention it that Hella is messing with us and trying to make us like she's been digging through our mind the whole time
Yep.
and trying to also influence us. So she's trying to make us feel bad about our mother's death, thinking it's our fault. We're just fighting our way through this last battle, making our way to our mother, who's the big thing, big corpse. Hella's trying to make us feel bad because she's going into our senses, into our mind, trying to influence us and
Can't let her.
just fuck with
Don't let
us.
her.
So she's making us think that our mother's in hell right now, which is presumably where we were with all that blood. But we reach our mother down there, and then that's where we're transported back to the what do you call it? The ship graveyard area where there's just broken ships everywhere.
Yep.
And then there's a gate in that ship graveyard that I initially tried to open. I spent like 5 minutes on it, and then I realized that it's a future thing, and that's the gate we come back to now.
Yeah, I saw that gate and I had this little moment where I was looking at the gate and then I was looking at Dillion's glow over there. I'm like, I want to try that gate, but I should probably just keep following Dillion. So that's what I kept doing.
Yep, I'd because the game doesn't really give you multiple options often, so I thought there was something here, but it was just it's a lock gate that you come back to.
Yeah. No, this game's very linear.
Very. So this is actually the gate to Helheim. So we tried to cross the bridge previously to get into Helheim to face Hela. Didn't make it. This is the official gate. As soon as we enter it, we're off into Helheim now, which is like the realm of hell
Yep.
and where Hela is.
And
So
I think that's when you get through this, that's when the darkness becomes a threat. Or like, the actual darkness, like lack of light.
yep, Fenrir's in here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Darkness as
so
in
it's
like lack of light. So
yeah,
it gets pretty
not
difficult.
our darkness is following us.
Yeah. To clarify.
Yeah, so as soon as we're in hell or in Helheim, Fenrir can sense us immediately. He's kind of like the Norse mythology version of like Cerberus, like the guardian dog of hell.
Yep. There's
I
many
believe in Norse mythology.
interpretations of this.
Yeah.
They're like mostly he is revered as like some giant wolf. Just like he's like a giant like creature beast, four-legged beast, and he's huge. But in
Yes.
this interpretation, where everything is all scary, he's a lot more powerful than that.
Yeah, he's almost a like an apparition of darkness that also
Yeah.
has like a wolf form.
So whenever you get caught in darkness, there's all these scary ass images that come up. Honestly, it reminded me of. Do you know about analog horror?
I do not.
If anybody is curious about what I'm talking about, you can go on YouTube and look up analog horror, and usually it's a bunch of like images and sounds that are really unsettling, and that's what that those images reminded me of. Creeped me the fuck out, honestly.
These gave me Gears of War vibes from the Krill when you're fighting General Rom.
Oh,
When you're
yep,
running through the darkness and the little bat things are attacking you, kind of like that, because you're sprinting from light source to light source.
yep.
If you get caught in the dark, those images are flashing, and I died quite a few times here in the dark.
I
And that
did
was
too.
the other death scene I was talking about. That's different from your normal combat because Senua starts to freak the fuck out, and
Yep.
the darkness just overtakes her, and it's a gruesome death.
Yeah. It
It's a
that
scary one.
that is a death animation that honestly scares the shit out of me because like she's like rolling on the floor like with her head like. "Ugh." It scares me.
Yeah, so we're jumping from light source to light source here. We finally get down to the end of the hallway, and there's like a gate there, and there's a torch that we can grab. We start to
Yep.
see like our mother through the iron bars, and she's talking to us. And pretty sure it's just an illusion. I don't think she's actually there.
It most
We're thinking
definitely was
she's
an
trapped
illusion.
in we're thinking she's trapped in hell, so we wanna get in there to get her out as well.
Yep.
And that's when runes appear on the door, and then we have to go find 3 runes back through all these corridors that we ran past. So there's kind of
Okay.
like 3 other mini puzzles that you have to do to get through this door.
Yeah, and the
So
puzzles
I
are
think you can,
pretty interesting. They all kind of
yeah,
involve, you know, uh, getting through from light source to light source. Fenrir is always a threat throughout these puzzles.
yep,
But yeah, they're pretty interesting. I like them.
yeah. We have one. The first one that I did, you go down a long spiral staircase, and then immediately you're like at a sewer.
Yep.
And of course, you have to go under the water to get under a gate, so your torch goes out. And then Fenrir chases
Oh man.
us.
Yeah, that was
That
intense.
was a worrying one because you're trying to slog through the water, and you can just hear the noises of him coming,
I know. I
and
was like, come
it's
on,
spooky.
go faster.
But luckily, like besides this water area or that first water jog to the first light source, almost every light source after that is very close together.
Yeah.
They're not too bad to get to.
Yeah. And I think after this part, you pretty much always have a torch on you.
Yep,
So,
yep.
and then in that room, once you get past the water, there is also fire sconces that you can light that'll light up the whole area, so you can solve the puzzle in that room, which is nice.
Tons of fire sconces.
Yep.
And yeah, you get your rune down there, and you go back up the staircase. The second rune I did was like across from that one. It's the one where I lit 2 sconces as soon as I entered in the room, and then the
Yep.
gate closed, and then all these enemies started spawning in there. And all
Oh
you had
yeah.
was she drops her torch to pull out her sword. So all you have is this little circle of light and all these enemies circling around you.
Yeah.
So you're trying to
I don't.
fight while staying in the light.
Was it that one, or I thought the enemies also carried torches?
No, I think it was just the torch you had that you drop on the ground
Okay.
is all you have for the light
It,
source.
okay. Yeah, that makes sense then.
But yeah, that one's just a fighting dungeon. As soon as you clear all the enemies, the gate opens back up and you can light the rest of the torches in the room to solve this rune puzzle. You head back out to the final one. You go up a spiral staircase instead of down to do this last one. I think that one was just straightforward. You just went up and got the rune, as far as I'm aware, in that third room. I don't think there was anything specific about it. So you go back, you get the door open. Of course, as soon as you get the door open, you kind of sense this coming. Your torch burns out immediately.
Oh, yep.
and you just start sprinting. So you get to this bridge area, and Senua jumps for the bridge as Fenrir is behind her, or like the spirit of Fenrir, and the bridge starts to break, and we fall down, and we land on another like little alcove because we're above like just a large chasm, and there's light above us because there's a hole at the very top of this cave or mountain.
Oh, are you talking about? Okay, I know what you're talking about. There was something that happened in that last room. There was a little puzzle that you had to do. Oh, wait. Is this the part? This is the part,
Uh,
right? Where the chasm, where you have to figure out that bridge thing to get through the door. Was there a door in
no,
this one?
that's later.
Oh, okay. It's always
At
later.
this getting there.
All the
At
memorable
this
things
point,
are later.
at this point, after the bridge falls down, we're kind of like scrambling and stuff, and then we fall into the alcove. As all that's happening, Dillion's head falls off of her belt, and it falls all the
Oh
way down
yeah.
the chasm. And I was like, "Well, that's a piece of mush at the
All
bottom now."
all hope is lost at this point. I'm like, what do we do now?
It hits a big rock on the way down. Apparently, it doesn't damage it.
Apparently
But I was
not.
like, "Yeah,
It's
that
like
head is mush."
still a head. Yeah. That should be a pancake by the time it hits the bottom.
Yep. So we're kind of safe. We get a torch again from that alcove, and we're kind of just shimmying along the walls, trying to make our way down because we got to go get Dillion's head back, of course.
Yeah.
So we just there's just a long segment of just walking and shimmying your way along walls and making your way further down into the chasm.
Yep. It
Eventually, we
was
get to another. Sorry.
it was a little bit boring at this part. I know it's like, yeah, but you're trying to get down to the bottom or whatever. It's like it's a lot of traversal stuff, but nothing about the traversal really made it interesting. It'd be cool if they added like a little gameplay mechanic of like staying on the ledges or something, but yeah, another walking sim
Yeah.
part of the game.
For the most part, you have a torch through this whole area, so it's not really a problem with Fenrir or anything like that.
Yeah, maybe it
But
was just to be a little break.
yeah, a little respite after that chase.
Yeah,
But eventually, you come back up on another gate, another rune to find.
another gate, another rune, another day.
So we do some more puzzles, proceed through the gate. I think this puzzle was one of the ones I died on the most, just because it's one of the few puzzles you can actually die in.
Yep.
Because you have to walk through a little waterfall
Yeah.
to go to the next light source, so your torch burns out right away, and you're like sprinting over there. This is how I discovered that wonderful death animation, because I kept trying to, like, you knock down the bridge, and she like just very narrowly gets into a light source. I kept trying to go through that tunnel ahead of it and to
Oh
like work my way around, and she was crawling so slowly that I would die every time. And I
no.
didn't
Yeah.
realize
No.
you have to run back to the waterfall, and now the gate's open on or the bridge is open on the other side for you to go.
Yeah. This one was a little bit of a brain teaser because I was sitting there staring at that that unlit fire sconce up there, and I'm just
Yep.
like, how the hell do I get up there? Because I was looking at that waterfall, and I'm like, okay, so
Yeah.
I can't bring fire through here. So yeah, what you ended up having to do was go back to the fire sconce that was, backtracking a little bit, going into that room where the fire sconce was, putting down the bridge, and then going back, running through the waterfall, and then run across the bridge, and then you narrowly escape Fenrir. But yeah,
Yep.
that was a bit of a brain teaser for me. That was probably the more confusing puzzles in this game.
Yeah, that took me a couple tries, couple deaths.
Yeah.
Eventually got that one. And then after you get this gate open, you crawl through some more tunnels while hands are trying to get you again. You used to get your torch, but there's water that we're walking through or that we're crawling through, and right at the end of the water, our torch goes out. But that's when we just get into the end of the room as our torch gets out, and you can see the light shining down from the top of the mountain because this is the very bottom of the chasm, and that's where Dillion's head is. So we pick up
Yeah.
his head, and we're just in this circle of light in the middle, and that's when Fenrir comes out to approach us into the light, in his physical form.
Yeah, and this is where we get into the boss fight, which is probably my favorite boss
It
fight
is
out of them all. There,
really good.
it was it was so good, and just the pacing of it was really nice. Once you figured out his attack patterns, he didn't really change up that much, but it was enough to where, like, after defeating the first two bosses, you know exactly what to do whenever he switches up his phases. So
Yep.
I'm not like saying it was easy to figure out does not deter from the difficulty it was, because it was still difficult, but it was a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, it was. I didn't find this one too difficult. It was just really cool. I like the techniques that Fenrir had. After a phase, he would go off into the darkness, and all you hear is just noise all around you, and you have to like focus to where you think he's about to come from, and he just leaps at you and knocks you down. I
Yeah.
never gauged those right. He just knocked me down every time,
Well,
but it's still really cool.
there's a little growling noise that he makes right before he jumps out at you. So as soon as I hear that growl, I'll just dodge in any direction, and usually I'll dodge him.
That worked for you.
Yep, that worked.
Yeah, so this was a really cool boss battle,
It
and
was.
not only that, he starts to use like his power of like the darkness as we're going through. So like as the fight went on, those flashings that would appear when we're in the dark would start to come on our screen.
Yep.
And like I think it was during the third phase, you couldn't even see anything. I was
You
just
could
slashing
not
wildly and
see
dodging.
anything. The only time you'd see a glimpse of him right before he attacks, and it
Yep.
was honestly really intense, but it was so much fun.
I was loving that. I was just slashing in the air and I would like hear my sword connecting,
Yep.
and then you just see like a little flash of Fenrir, and you just try and roll away from whatever attack he's going to do, and
Yep.
it was a
It,
spectacular boss
it
battle.
was exactly. It was so much fun, and I am kind of upset that none of the other boss battles kind of are as good as this, but it yeah, I really enjoyed it. For it being one of the last boss battles, they definitely ended it on a good tone.
They went all out. Yep. So he, after we defeat Fenrir, he seems to dissolve. He just goes into little dust speckles, and we're kind of just standing there for a little bit, admiring or resting from the battle.
Yep.
And then Fenrir grabs us out from the dark. It's like a little quick cutscene. He just drags us into the dark, and you kind of just hear screaming. I don't know if I missed a part of this cutscene, but you kind of just hear screaming and some sword slashing, and then Senua's in the light again. So I assumed she just killed him in there
Yeah,
or finished him off.
I think she did. I think there was a point where it was just like at the end of this where it comes back to the light. I think she was standing over it like a dead Fenrir. So yeah, I might have missed that part, but
Yeah, yeah. So we get a cutscene of her talking to Dillion's head now after Fenrir is finally dead, and we get to learn more backstory between her and Dillion, and then we get a cutscene or a longer cutscene that kind of involves a montage of us talking to the shadow or father as we make our way back up to the top of this chasm that we went down. I'm really glad they didn't make us backtrack all this. That would
yeah,
have been an absolute
that
pain in
would
the
have been
ass. They
that would
they
have
kind
been
of
a
just
huge
montaged
pain.
it.
Yeah.
So once we're back at the top, it gives us back control of Senua, and you make our way up a really large staircase, and then from there is where we reach that bridge that you were talking about earlier, where you have to view it from the different points. There's like three
Yes.
sections of the bridge that are gone, and you have to go view it from three different perspectives to put it back together. It's pretty cool. I found the third part of the bridge a little difficult to figure out. I didn't realize you had to fix something else before it.
Well, it was
You had to
kind of
like fix a gate.
it was a little consecutive on like how they wanted you to complete this bridge. So you had to fix the first part of the bridge, and then you kind of had to go around counterclockwise around the bridge to figure out like what you need to do to complete the bridge. I thought it was a bit intuitive on how to figure out this bridge. I don't know about you.
I liked the first two portions, but like I said, I got stumped on the third one because you
Yeah,
didn't
cuz
just need to focus on that part of the bridge. You need to
yeah,
also rebuild a gate with your mind before you did that.
yeah, that kind of stumped me too. I didn't know about that gate until, running around 3 times to
Yeah, that
figure
one
out
took me a
that,
bit of
but
running around.
other than
But
that
after
it was
we
pretty good.
Yeah, and after we build this bridge, we get a similar series as when we crossed the bridge to Helheim before. We're starting to cross this towards Hela's domain, and every enemy we faced thus far starts to come into play again with the two or three new enemies that we faced.
All across the bridge.
So you have like five different types of enemies all facing you, and I really liked this section of battle because I don't think there was a guardrail on this bridge. So I was
No.
just kicking people off. I don't know if
Oh,
you
I
did that
didn't
at
even
all,
think
but
of
that was
that.
really fun.
I didn't
I
even
was
think
like
of
getting
that.
people close
That's
to the
really
edge. I was kicking them, and
yeah,
they were going right off.
nice.
It worked really well because you didn't have to hack and slash a lot.
Yeah, for me it was mainly just trying to keep them all cuz they start to spawn behind you also. So like it was a lot of me just looking back and forth trying to figure out who I need to fight first or whatever. Usually it was the big Resident Evil guys
Yep.
and then
Yeah, because
kind
those
of go
guys
down
will
from there.
charge you.
Yeah, you really need to prioritize different enemies in this.
Yeah, and I did find the targeting system to be a little lackluster at times. I didn't even realize there was a targeting system until I think after Valraven. But you kind of just flip the right stick to go between enemies, and it I don't know, it just didn't feel great all the time.
No, because sometimes they'll be like right in front of each other, and because it'll adjust your camera to who you're looking at, right?
Yep,
So you
yeah,
don't know exactly who you're locked onto. So there could be points where there's one enemy that's behind another one, and you could be locked on the one that's behind, and then
yep,
you'll sit there and start slashing, like going right past the enemy. It's like pretending they're not there. It's like, oh, I'm
yeah.
just gonna
You'll miss the target you were going for, especially when you
exactly.
start to fight a whole big group. You'll definitely like swing the wrong way.
Yeah,
But
the targeting could have been better. I mean, at least give some sort of indicator on who you're locked onto.
yeah, so we get to the end of this big battle here. We get to large doors again, as is common in this game. And at the end of these large doors that we open, we see another bridge, of course,
Yep,
with a large ball of light at the end. So as we're getting closer to this ball of light at the end, the voices start begging us to stop. They don't want us to continue down here. We kind of reach a mirror, like 100 feet or so from the ball of light. And that's when we kind of had a similar scene as that campfire one,
yep,
where we see ourselves in the mirror again, and our mirror self is also begging us not to continue. There's a This is a pretty good scene here. I like this one.
yeah, it's really
And
good.
after this scene, we step through the mirror and continue towards the light.
I do remember the voices telling us to stop, and then this is the point where Senua starts to talk back to the voices, telling them to shut up or telling them to, you know, just basically not listening to them anymore, which is, very
Yeah.
triumphant part.
Yeah, she's overcoming her own her own self, I guess.
Yeah.
So after we step through the mirror, we try to continue towards the ball of light, and that's when we see our shadow self or like our mirror self next to us again, and we're kind of everything kind of goes black around us, and we're transported into like another cutscene type of thing where we see a big pyre, like a funeral pyre, in front of us with our mother strapped to it. She's like being burned alive in front of us, and then the shadow next to us is warning us that this was our mother's price for defying the gods. And we see that the shadow was our father at this point, because you see his face, and it was the same as our father in previous cutscenes.
Yeah. And this is basically where Senua like kind of disowns everything she believed about the gods and everything, because this is basically what her interpretation, that the darkness just wants to see her fall.
Yeah, this is where she's really starting to overcome it. She's starting to ignore the voices. She doesn't believe the gods. She's starting to realize that they're lying to her. She thinks that Hela killed her mother. She starts to realize that maybe it wasn't her own fault. She thinks the shadow's lying to us, that because they're trying to keep telling us that it's our fault. This is what happens when you defy the gods. Your mother deserved this.
Saying it was all her fault, same as
Yeah,
everything else, is like throughout the reoccurring theme throughout this whole game is saying that it's all her fault. And you like, I think at this point she comes to the realization is like, well, what did I do to deserve all this, you know?
yeah.
And it, like,
She's
I
starting to
think
understand that it's not her.
in her own logic, she realized that it's really not her fault. And, you know, she just like, the darkness just wants to scare her into believing that everything is her fault.
Yeah, it's these intrusive thoughts, these dark thoughts that tell you everything's your fault, that push guilt onto you, that sort of thing. That caused her to think that she was at fault for the death of her mother, for Dillian, and everything. We kind of get transported back, and this is where we start to get into this huge. This is like the first area that looks like it's for a god,
Yep.
because it's just these huge moving platforms. There's stuff going on all over the room. And we see Hela at the end, and she's just massive.
Huge.
She looks like a big mannequin, but like all cracked and broken, and half of her face is gone.
Very
Just,
creepy looking.
yeah, very creepy, and just
There,
massive.
yeah, she's massive. And this is the point where Senua goes on this rampage. You know, she's just pissed off.
Yep, she has the god killing sword. She's like, it's not my fault. It was Hela's
Yeah,
fault.
this was the
She's
part I was
gonna
so
go kill
excited
Hela.
about. Yeah,
she
she's saying that you can't kill me, and then she's like, "Well, I have a sword that could kill gods," and just sprinting at her. And like, this is where
Yep.
a lot of enemies come at you. A lot.
Yeah, this is probably the biggest combat section of the game, but it's
Yeah.
also one of the easiest because for narrative purposes, they cut down the amount of hits it takes to kill everything. Like
Yep.
I was saying earlier, I think those lower totem pole guys were only one hit kills
Yep.
at this point. So you're just kind of feeling super powerful in here. You're just knocking through everything.
It's very satisfying, and it's a lot more forgiving than other parts of the game because of that. Whenever you take damage, you'll go down and you'll be able to get up in like half a second. So
Yep.
there's not really much breaking in your momentum through this. It's just a lot of enemies.
Yeah, and you see like the darkness that was in our arm the whole game start to spread through our body a lot more throughout this process as we're pushing through here. There's kind of rule of three. There's 3 platforms where you
Yep.
kill a whole lot of enemies on one section, move to the
And
next, do the same. As you get to this, I believe it's the 3rd platform right before Hela, you start to fight a lot of enemies, and then you start to fight this black blob that forms into Surtur, Valraven, and Fenrir.
yep.
There's like 2 of them, and they kind of like all rotate in and out using their powers, and I really like that part.
That was really cool because you already know how to fight them, and the fact that they're just throwing 2 of them now, like
Yeah, you're fighting Fenrir and Surtur at the same time, and you're just
like
trying to hold your own.
at first I thought it was like gonna be impossible. I mean, oh man, it's gonna be tough, but actually it wasn't that bad.
No, it
It
was
was,
like just a shadow formation. Like it wasn't fully formed, but you like seen the shape to know it was them.
yeah,
But yeah, you fight through them, and then you get to the very final platform where Hela is, and she shrinks down to like human size. We She kind of just stares at us as we're trying to approach her, and then just enemies are just coming out of everywhere.
yep.
It gets to a point where you can't even kill them all. You're swinging wildly around you, trying
There's
to
so many
survive.
that you get
And there's
so swarmed and surrounded that like I was
you
freaking out. I'm like, how am I supposed to do all this? I was doing at one point I was doing more dodging than actual fighting, and then I'm like, okay, I'm not
yeah,
getting anywhere. So I did more fighting, and then that bit me in the ass. I got
yep.
my
And
ass kicked.
there's just way too
But
many. I don't think they expect you to be able to get out of here.
no,
They
reminded
eventually
me
knock you out.
reminded me of that last mission in Halo Reach
Yeah, just
where
survive.
yeah, it's like you think you have a chance, but you actually don't.
No, you're doomed. So eventually they knock you down, and all the enemies kind of go away. And the darkness spreads through you entirely, like it goes through your face, through your head. You're pretty much just entirely like burnt, almost.
Yep.
And we're kind of kneeling before Hela. We're crying. We're begging her for Dillian's soul.
She's just staring. Just
Yeah, she's just
blank
staring.
nothing.
She doesn't say a word this whole game. She kind of just stares at us, and then she grabs Senua's sword that was on the ground near her, and she grabs Senua by the throat and plunges the blade through her, as Senua requested, because she said she would give her life for Dillian's.
Yep.
And then we have this is a really long cutscene, but super good.
Yeah.
She's lying there. Senua's dying on the ground, and in her own pool of blood, she can see their in her reflection. She sees Dillian, and they're kind of just talking. They're saying their goodbyes and their parting philosophies and stuff, and all their quotes.
What I got of it, it was basically her acceptance. Like, think of this whole game as like 7 stages of grief, and this is the
Yeah,
last part where it's acceptance.
yeah, that might actually fit in there. I didn't think about that.
Well, I mean, because she wasn't able to bring him back anyways, and that's what she realized right at that last part, right
Yeah,
before
yep,
Hela kills her or stabs her. She realized that there's no way to bring him back, and I think at that point that's she came to the acceptance that he's actually gone and there's no bringing him back.
yeah. She realizes that maybe Hela wasn't responsible. Hela still doesn't say a word this whole time.
Right.
That Hela never actually had Dillian's soul. That maybe it was just Druth putting thoughts in her head that
Right.
she
Yeah.
could go even get Dillian back. But after Senua lies there, and then we assume she's dead, we kind of switch perspectives over to Hela, and she grabs Dillian's head that was on the ground there, and she brings it to this edge of the cliff that we were next to, and she drops it over the cliff. And as it falls, we kind of like pan, watching the head, and you hear Senua say, "Goodbye, my love." And as it pans back up after following Dillion's head, we see that it was actually Senua and not Hela, and Hela is dead on the ground behind us.
Yeah.
I assume it was just one last mental trick, making
Yep.
us think it was Senua that died.
Classic, classic Ninja Theory. No, it was, yeah. So finding out that it was all just in her head made me question like what was real. What
Yeah,
was were all those enemies I just faced real? Was Hella real?
or any of the gods real?
Were
Yeah,
any of the gods real? Like what? Like through this whole experience, like it made me wonder like what was actually real.
yeah. And so Senua kind of breaks the fourth wall again, and she kind of looks directly at us, and she's kind of like beckoning us to join her as she walks away from Hela's body. That there's kind of more story to this.
Yeah. There's the
This is
sequel
the
hook.
sequel. Yeah, I really like this song that rolls. Credits roll right after this. This is a good song though. In the
Yeah.
credits.
Yeah, it's a good song. But yeah, that's the whole game. Rolls the credits after that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I mean,
that's
it
Hellblade.
was definitely definitely a good experience. Honestly, not my favorite game in terms of like how fun it was, but it was definitely like a game that like I appreciated playing, as I've said before.
Yeah,
Yeah,
as I was playing this through the days, I didn't ever look forward to these puzzles. In fact, I dreaded a lot of them.
yeah,
But
me too.
the story itself, like the story is just great. If I could have gotten like a walking simulator version of this game,
Right.
maybe it wouldn't have been as good if we didn't have as much interaction. But I just loved the story. It was perfect.
The story was great. It was a bit it was a bit confusing at first. Maybe because like I'm not that great of a listener when it comes to like when I'm playing the game, like listening to how the story unfolds and stuff like that. I don't know, but it's maybe I'm more of a dialogue. I pick up story from dialogue usually, I guess. So maybe that's where I had a lot of trouble picking up on the story. But nonetheless, having it like explained to me the proper way made the story that much more interesting. And for anyone that wants to play this game, definitely try it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
despite the puzzles and the gameplay being a little bit harsh and difficult to get into at first, once you do get the hang of everything, it's not a bad game. There's some walking segments that are pretty long, but overall, the runestones kind of try to make up that gap to add some audio
Yeah,
in between.
the the lore stones, they add to the the understanding of Norse mythology, but not really much of the story. Yeah, the story was very hard to grasp for me at first. I had, it's like one of those things where I had to have it explained 3 times in order for me to get it. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's like watching Shutter Island, I guess. I
yeah,
don't know
Shutter
if you've
Island.
seen that with
That's actually a good
Leo.
example. I don't think anybody would get that without doing a thorough review of it first or afterwards, saying why, what happened, all that. You have to
Yeah,
have an
it's
open mind, and you have to be thinking in a different. You have to understand more cryptic things, I guess.
yeah, and it's. I don't think that's even. I don't think you can pick it all up in the first playthrough, unless you know
No,
exactly what you're looking for. But I don't know if I'd want to play through this a second time. Maybe just go through and collect all the lower stones.
right,
But
and I'm surprised
some
that
the
you didn't.
gameplay does get a little long.
I
I
I thought I collected all of them. There's like 17 of them, right?
I thought it was near 20 something, but they do a really good thing in this game, which more games with collectibles need to do, is they do chapter selects with showing how many you
Oh,
got in each chapter, and then you can just go
that's
back to each chapter individually to get what you missed.
yeah, that's golden. Yeah, more games should do that instead of having to replay the whole thing. Because honestly, playing through the game, the story segments, if I could just watch the cutscenes, I think that would be cool. But yeah, definitely not a game I would want to play again. But I think for the experience that it's worth having, I think it's worth a try. But not really something replayability wise. Probably not.
Yeah, I did have a couple other notes here that I want to mention. I did play on PC for most of the time, still having Xbox issues. I played on medium high graphics, and I did notice some frame rate stuttering, but overall it was manageable. Targeting system, confusing puzzles, and some of the mouth syncing was weird. I don't know if that was a mocap thing or a
I
translation
never noticed
thing.
that. I always thought
I just
the mouth syncing was pretty on point for the most part.
I don't know, I just felt like the live action ones were good. I just thought some of the ones with Senua didn't seem like they lined up great. But it could have been my audio out of sync or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. I'm not sure.
Other things I did really like, tiny details like I really like Dillian's head on our hip. If you just watch it while you're running, it just bounces along as you're going.
Yep. Yeah.
I really enjoyed tiny details like that.
There's like a little bell on it too that you can hear while you're walking around.
Oh really?
Yeah. Maybe that was
Yeah.
something in her hair too. I'm not exactly sure. But I know that I noticed there was a little like bell or something clinking around while I was walking around.
And then for someone like me who's pretty hard of hearing, I was very appreciative of all the accessibility settings in this game. They had text size, background color, font color, stuff that should be standard in every single game.
Oh, absolutely.
Just because it's such simple stuff, just to make so
Yeah.
many people's life better. But not only like audio stuff for me, but they just had like colorblind settings, just different ways to play if you have different disabilities. Just great stuff all around for
Yeah.
the accessibility settings in this one.
That's good. I never really went through any options or anything for this game, so because I played it all on Xbox, so I guess my experience on console is pretty good. Other than the lack of tutorials and frustrating puzzles, yeah, it like
Yeah,
is in terms of like being able to play the game without any like gameplay issues was not really a problem for me.
and for those that want to go play this game, it is Microsoft owned, so it is an exclusive to Microsoft. So if you want to
Oh,
play it, it's
really?
on PC and Xbox only. As far as
I
I'm
did not
aware,
know
it's not
that.
on PlayStation yet. But due to the fact that it's a first party game, Microsoft owned, it is in Game Pass and should stay there indefinitely. So for those who want to play it and have a PC or Xbox, just get Game Pass. It's worth it for just pay a month of Game Pass to play this game,
Oh, absolutely. Game
along
Pass
with
is
everything else in Game Pass.
Game Pass is great.
But yeah,
I
that's
think
that was Hellblade.
that's Hellblade. If I had any plugs to refer to you two, I would. But I mean, I guess on a note, a game about mental health, BetterHelp.com. If you experience anything that happens in this game, I don't know if BetterHelp would help, but medication maybe. I don't know. But
They're not a sponsor, by the way.
they are not a sponsor. They're not paying me to say that, but I do use BetterHelp, and I definitely would recommend that to anybody struggling with mental health issues. The therapists on there are
Yeah,
great.
and with that, you can also reach us at Hazardous Opinions Pod at gmail.com if you want to shoot us an email, or
Please.
Hazardous Opinions Pod on Instagram. So far, we're just sticking with those two. Probably gonna shoot up a Discord, but if you guys want to shoot us a message, send us any requests, anything you guys want to see us play, or we also do movies. And next week, I believe, for the next episode, we are doing our first movie episode, which will be The Gray Man, which
The
is on
Gray
Netflix.
Man.
If you wanna watch ahead, so you can get some opinions from us after you watch it, that would be
Super
awesome.
excited.
But yeah, that's all
Yeah.
I have.
Please send us your feedback. What you liked, what you didn't like, questions you have about Hellblade. Send us your opinions about Hellblade. I would love to see those. Did you like the game? Did you think it was frustrating? Please drop us a line.
Yeah, or if there's any comments towards our podcast, how we can make this better or get better in touch with you guys, just let us know.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, see ya.
See ya.